there's nothing I disagree with that Nikki said, except maybe the little opposition to the wildlife policy, but our clients are the animals and I have to represent. So I'm first going to probably answer some of the questions that you have, and that's why is an animal welfare group contributing to a panel on Canada's the state of Canadian international development. As introduced, our organization, one of our 4 priority program areas is disaster management. We've been doing it for 50 years. And we basically help build local capacity to protect people's animals in disasters. Now, for the vast majority of our response work in disasters, those animals are farm animals, both food producing and working animals, and they're in developing countries. We are the only international animal welfare organization with full-time, specifically trained staff that can deliver an immediate emergency response for animals at a moment's notice. We have significant reach, but that's a drop in the bucket. When we look at, Nikki was just speaking about those disasters that don't make the headline news. Well, Mongolia is experiencing a Zud right now. That is a harsh freezing cold after a drought. And for all the nomadic herders that rely on their livestock for their livelihoods, this is a huge issue. The last Zud in 2010 resulted in more than 8.5 million animals dying. So our organization, obviously our mission is different. Our mission is to reduce animal suffering. It's a moral issue for us. But we've seen through our work that that mission is very much linked to the mission of many development and humanitarian groups, because animals are so important to these people. Our disaster staff see it firsthand when they're responding to a disaster, that people aren't willing to, or they are willing to risk their own lives and the lives of their family to ensure their livestock are protected in disasters, because that is really important income that will keep them self-sufficient and help them recover from a disaster. We collaborate with the International Federation of Red Cross right now. We're helping them integrate animal protection into their work. So we're slowly trying to increase our reach. But our main policy goal is we'd like to see other humanitarian actors considering the importance of animals to their work too. So I'm going to share some points just from my, it's been less than 2 years lobbying on this issue to the Canadian government. So I've seen a change that I can comment on. But just coming from that limited perspective, we're pretty new to representing our work here in Canada. We've never applied for Canadian government funding. We don't have any intention to. We just want to see animals integrated into our international humanitarian development policies. Not only are animals food, they're an important source of micronutrients, they're an important source of income, but when crops fail or are destroyed from a disaster, animals can help people recover. They become more reliant on their animals while they wait for their crops to regrow and to reharvest them. But it's also the draft powder and the manure for sustainable crop production that's important. It's the donkey that carries firewood and water and items that women would otherwise have to carry if those donkeys weren't available. And women certainly benefit for this type of policy change that we're advocating for. Animals are, for some communities, the only asset that women have access to and can manage, so it's very important for economic empowerment. There are a number of issues, and I think we'd like to see the multi-benefits of animals, and animals be seen in a comprehensive way in humanitarian development work. Our main message is that if animals are included in our disaster response, then it will save more lives and livelihoods and help people recover quicker. So what do I think of this new government? Well, let's see, what did I write down as notes? One, I'm just going to put out there that many of you use a different language. As an animal welfare advocate, I've had to learn, and Nikki has gratefully helped me with all the acronyms in this field, in the development field. But I think what's great is the Sustainable Development Goals and other global policy frameworks are forcing us all to speak to each other and break down those silos and use a universal language, which is great, because animal welfare is a big part of the Sustainable Development Goals and fundamental to a sustainable future. Animal welfare is a nonpartisan issue. We've certainly had MPs in all parties support the work that we're doing. But I think this government is doing everything it can to show that it's very different from the last government. That is seen in the representation of cabinet. It's seen in the priorities in Minister Bobo's mandate letter to the Department Change of Global Affairs Canada. I think the representation of Canada shows this government prioritizes gender equality and diversity, both values that are very important to furthering our international development goals. There's definitely, as Nikki said, a greater emphasis on the importance of science and evidence-based decision-making and having policy frameworks in place before announcements are made. We see this by the appointment of a new Minister of Science and the pre-election commitment to review Global Affairs Canada's policies first. So definitely I think Canada is back. I think multilateralism is back. I've been in meetings with Global Affairs Canada where the staff were running down the list of the issues to talk about. When they got to multilateralism, they just said, oh, we're doing it again. And I think there's certainly been a cultural change in government and civil servants. Scientists are unmuzzled, but so are civil servants. And I was just not even a month after the election at a meeting with Global Affairs Canada, organized jointly with CCIC, the Canadian Council for International Cooperation. And microphones were set up for civil society organizations to ask questions. And the Director Generals of Global Affairs Canada actually said that all staff at Global Affairs Canada are invited to step up to the mic and ask them a question. And this woman who was sitting at my table let out a really awkward woo! And then she looked down and was really red in the face and didn't know what to do. And I think that really reflects what's going on here, is there's definitely a change you can feel in the air, but we don't know how to embrace it because we haven't experienced it in so long, perhaps never. So it was really interesting to see that from the civil servants. But I think anyway, there's been every indication that this government wants to be more transparent, more inclusive, consulting, open. This is a government that values and wants to contribute to the role of the UN. For our organization, we're very involved with the United Nations in those global processes, so we feel very optimistic by that. Climate change and security, I think, are going to be drivers of the international agenda. And we see evidence of the government's interest in climate change already with the commitment of $2.6 billion to developing countries to help mitigate climate change. So we're starting to see climate change and resilience being more buzzwords in international development policy. What isn't changing, though, is I think the increasing the aid budget is still going to be a challenge. I think there's still going to be, I mean, the minister even said that they're not going to meet their target of 0.7% anytime soon. And they're still interested in finding ways, novel ways, of trying to deal with the growing aid need. And certainly involving the private sector is still going to be an issue. I think that we need to demonstrate to Canadians, actually, that investing in development is investing in global security and the environment and sustainability. I think this government gets it. I mean, we all probably remember Trudeau before he was Prime Minister, his comments about the root causes of the Boston bombing. I think this is a government that takes a holistic approach to solving complex problems, but I think we need to convince Canadians of the importance so that they have that leverage to go forward. How will Canadian agencies reclaim their place on the world stage? That was a question posed to us. Well, I think we can help position Canada as a global, as a leader in global policy forums. This is a government that wants to see Canada's expertise. The Prime Minister has been selling Canada's expertise on the world stage, so we can help him sell ours. We all have experts in our organizations in international development that can provide evidence to this government that believes in evidence-based decision-making. We all have our niche. I think that there is also an opportunity to engage many new MPs in international development issues. There are 199 new MPs. There are 1,000 new staff to engage in this issue. So it's a great opportunity to be talking about these very important issues. It's also the most diverse parliament ever. So just to close, I think we need to demonstrate evidence of our progress and make our progress more resilient. So I definitely echo what Nikki was saying about effectiveness. We've often used that argument for our issue, that including animals in the humanitarian response has a significant payback in terms of community economic benefits. saving people's livelihoods, helps them attain self-sufficiency and become less reliant on aid. I think climate change is causing us also to talk more about the importance of resilience, because it can so quickly undo development gains. The United Nations International Strategy for Disaster Risk Reduction, that unit reported that human mortality in the face of disasters is actually decreasing, but the value of lost productive assets is actually increasing. And that's a big issue for us, is the importance of protecting the livestock assets and other assets and people's livelihoods. Canada signed that global agreement called the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction last March. It's a UN global agreement on how to reduce and curb those impacts of disasters. I think it's really important. It emphasizes the importance of building local capacity to protect livelihoods in disasters. And for 800 million of the world's poorest people, livestock are very important to those livelihoods. Thank you.